being here. I'd like to thank the members of the legislature, the judges of the Supreme Court, the new statewide elected officials, and all the great people that put together what I anticipated looks like was one heck of a good week, wasn't it? You have a good time here? Yeah, it looks like it was a lot of fun. You know, you all are at such a critical time in your lives where your futures are going to take shape. You all have a lot of promise or you would not be here. I can see the enthusiasm. I can see the quality of the people that you've elected. And there's just so much waiting for you down the road. I've had the honor to get to know a lot of very successful people in my life. I've been a lawyer, as you know, in private practice. I got to talk to CEOs and top-level business people and judges. I served as a diplomat and got to work with both the current president and the past president, the vice presidents, members of the Senate, ambassadors, and leaders around the world. I've been a politician now, working with governors and senators every day. And I've seen some really, really successful people. But as was alluded to in the introduction, I've also served as a federal prosecutor, where I saw criminals, people who did very bad things. I've served as an international law enforcement official, and I saw very bright people who turned into the heads of drug cartels, who were part of gangs, who had organized crime syndicates in Russia and other places around the world. And as state auditor, I've only been auditor for 21 months, I found over 20 people, public officials, many of them elected, who have stolen and embezzled money and defrauded the taxpayers, and many of them I've had to put in jail. So there's a lot of really smart people that go on to do amazing things and become very, very successful. And for whatever reason, I've unfortunately seen a lot of really smart, bright people who pick a bad path and who go on to become criminals and do bad things. And I really believe, based on what I've seen and how I've gotten to know these people, some of them behind bars, I've talked to them, that most of the important decisions on what direction they were going to take in their life, whether it would be to advance good in the world or to advance themselves and advance bad in the world, were made right around the time they were your age. So this is a really critical time for you to make the right decisions, to do the right things, and take a path that's going to lead to tremendous success. Because from what I understand, in order to get here, you have to have the potential for greatness. But greatness can be channeled in a lot of directions. You can be a great criminal, or you can be a great leader. And I'm hoping that you all will choose the right path as you go forward. So what I did, and there was a mention of one of my books earlier on, several years ago I decided, I want to find out what the qualities are that lead to long-term success in somebody's life as opposed to the bad path. And I interviewed 40 very successful people I've been lucky enough to come into contact with. Politicians, rock stars like Sheryl Crow, 4-star generals, CEOs. And I wanted to see, what is it that led them to long-term success versus a bad path? And I want to talk to you a little bit tonight, before we swear in your wonderful new statewide elected officials, about some of the things that those people told me, and some of the things you should think about at what I think is a very critical time in your life, the time when you'll choose the right path or the wrong path. Now, I'm sure people have already talked to you this week about the first thing I'm going to say, which is integrity. Have you been talking about integrity this week? And the importance of integrity. Honesty, respect for others, little things, writing thank you notes, looking up to people, learning from people. Having integrity is the core of any long-term successful person, because then you're looking out for what's right as opposed to what's in your interest. And that's a critical piece of it, a very critical piece of it. Another thing I think is very important is spirituality. Now, for me, spirituality means my religion. But some of the people I talked to and some of the people I worked with were not so religious, but they still had a sense of spirituality. Successful people do not live for today, for what feels good right now, for what's going to help them right now at the expense of others. They realize that they have a place in this world that's special. I was talking to an astronomy professor at Yale several years ago, and I said to her, do you believe in spirituality and you study science? And she said, let me tell you something. I take my telescope and I look out and I see a very dark and forbidding universe. I see, if you go close to the sun, things really, really cold, and further away something very hot, something very cold further out. I see jagged mountains and craters, and then you see Earth, this amazing anomaly. Nothing else like it anywhere any of our telescopes can see. It's something very, very special in the universe. And it's an honor that all of us have been put on this earth by our God at this time, and there is a greater purpose to it. And that's what she told me. She was a scientist. She believed in spirituality. There is a reason we're here. Life is a precious precious resource. And the fact that you were given a life at this place on this earth is amazing. And then think about where you were born. The United States of America, the greatest country in the history of civilization at its greatest and most powerful time. Aren't you lucky to be here? If you had been born 500 years ago, you would have been dealing with disease and pestilence and backwardness. But you're here in the USA, the greatest economy the world has ever known, the most powerful military the world has ever known, but more important, the greatest government ever in the history of Earth. And you're here right now at this time. That's something special. That is not an accident. And you need to make the best of it. So, thank you. I think it's important that you have integrity and that you have a sense of spirituality, that there is a reason I'm here, and I'm here to do great things, and it was not an accident, and I'm here in the greatest part of the universe, the greatest country on the planet at its greatest time. It's a tremendous honor, and you should be proud of that. Now, what can take you away from that? What can take you away from your integrity and your spirituality? At your age, there are tremendous temptations. I have 2 children about your age, and I talk to them about this all the time. You can be tempted by drugs, alcohol. You can be tempted to cheat on a test to get ahead. If you're an athlete, you can be tempted by steroids. All these things may have already come to you, and if they haven't, they will soon. These are the things where if you make the wrong choices, you fall off that path. You stop having that integrity. You stop having that spirituality. You start to think, really, I'm just in it for me. And it's hard sometimes to resist temptation. People who have no integrity, they have more choices than you do. If you're competing with somebody who has no integrity, you have all the good choices. He has all the good choices and all the bad choices. He can pick and choose. So he has an advantage over you, or so it seems. But I want to tell you something. Here's what I've learned from seeing a lot of people around the world, from warlords and terrorists to criminals. The people who have no integrity really have no advantage, because every time they do something bad, every time they cheat, look at Lance Armstrong, people know about it. People know about it. And they live in fear that somebody's going to expose them or show them up. And you do not want to live a life of fear. If you have integrity, you do not live a life of fear. And you always have an advantage over the people who have no integrity. I remember when I first was made ambassador, I had to go through this top secret security clearance process. And here I was 46 years old, and the investigators asked me everything I had done wrong since the time I was in high school. And I just sit there and tell them every single thing. So if you think the things you're doing now won't make any difference 20 years from now, in fact, the exact opposite is true. The mistakes you make now could prevent you from realizing your dreams 20 years from now. Now, the good news is, nobody expects perfection. I made some mistakes. I had to tell them some things I didn't want to tell them, and I'm not going to tell you. But you know what? They weren't too bad. And I got the clearance and I went forward. Only two months later, I got a call from a friend of mine. He was up for a big job in the Bush administration. Big job. And he said to me, Tom, I have another friend, and I had a feeling I knew who that other friend was, who's also up for a big job, and he's messing around on his wife. Do you think he has to tell the investigator that? And I said, well, if he doesn't, he goes to jail. 18 U.S.C. 1001, the Supreme Court judges know that. You go to jail when you lie to a federal investigator. Of course he has to tell him, and I think he was talking about himself, but he said it was a friend. Well, turned out that person withdrew their name from a very big government job because they had made a mistake and they thought they could get away with it, and they cut short their career by not having integrity, by not making the right choices. So the things you do today, the things you do now, are going to affect your future.